Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Listless trade on the Lal Street as the sensex drops below 80,000, but the mid-cap outperformance continues. International gold prices hit another record high as safe haven buying continues. Infra major Larsen & Toubro largely missed estimates in Q2 even as margins contract. The company says two-thirds of its order inflows are from international markets, maintains its growth guidance for the full year. FMCG major Dabur reports a 5% drop in revenue, a 17% drop in profits. Volumes decline over 7%, but this is better than street estimates of a double-digit decline. Swiggy reveals its growth blueprint days ahead of the 11,000 crore rupee IPO that opens on the 6th of November. The company expects quick commerce to drive growth and food delivery to drive margins. Plans to open 1,500 dark stores within a year. Google's parent Alphabet reports a robust third quarter. Cloud business helps revenue rise 15% to over $88 billion. CEO Sundar Pichai says 25% of new coding is being done by AI. Army sources say India and China have completed the process of disengagement in Ladakh's border areas of Depsang and Demchok, add that ground commanders will decide the patrolling modalities. Israeli tanks entered the outskirts of a village in southern Lebanon in their deepest incursion yet. U.S. envoy to the United Nations says Israel is not addressing the catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Over 110 people killed in an attack on a residential building in northern Gaza. With less than a week to go for the U.S. elections, Kamala Harris calls Donald Trump a petty tyrant and makes her case for a new generation of leadership. In a speech in Washington, D.C., U.S. President Joe Biden attempts to clarify after a video appears to show him insulting Trump supporters as garbage. A CNBC-TV18 exclusive Air India cancels at least 60 flights to the U.S. in November and December due to a shortage of aircraft. Sources say several wide-body aircraft are grounded due to maintenance issues. Air India tells CNBC-TV18 passengers have been informed about the cancellations. Musical chairs across several seats in Maharashtra as alliance partners file nomination papers for the same seats. At least 9 such seats in Mumbai city alone. Many leaders file papers as independent candidates after being snubbed by their party. And on the show, the Australian High Commissioner to India pads up for CNBC-TV18 to talk cricket and trade. Says over 100 Indian CEOs have been invited to Australia when the Indian cricket team goes on tour later this year. All of that coming up in just a bit. But first, the action on the Lal Street. It turned out to be a lackluster day on the Lal Street on the eve of Diwali. The Nifty and the sensex ended 0.5% lower, with financials being the big underperformers. The Nifty Bank Index fell over 1%. Mid-caps, however, did fare better than the blue chips, and that index ended 0.25% higher. Just a reminder, the markets will be open for trade tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a normal trading session. Moderate trading will be held on the 1st of November, which is Friday, between 5:30 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. So remember, tomorrow the markets trade as always, even though large parts of the country are celebrating Diwali tomorrow. Now, international gold prices are scaling new peaks once again as safe haven buying continues to spur the yellow metal. Investors jittery ahead of the U.S. elections, with polls pointing to a dead heat between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Geopolitical tensions are also fueling the uncertainty. Silver prices remain closer to record levels. And Bitcoin briefly climbed above the $73,000 mark, nearing its all-time high. This after investors poured billions into Bitcoin exchange-traded funds in anticipation of the U.S. presidential election result. The world's largest cryptocurrency last hit a record high in March this year. Former President Donald Trump has been portraying himself as the pro-crypto candidate. On to tensions in West Asia. Israel continues to deepen its offensive in southern Lebanon, killing at least 15 people in its latest spate of attacks in the region. Israeli military has also bombed another residential building in Gaza, killing at least 19 people. The attack has come less than a day after the IDF bombed a 5-story building in the same area, killing at least 110 people and wounding dozens. The U.S. government has called the attack horrifying. Meanwhile, reports suggest that a drone has exploded in an industrial area in Israel. The drone hit a factory that was being used to produce aircraft components. In earnings now, L&T reporting a steady performance for Q2, profits beating estimates, growing 5% year-on-year. Revenues also surpassed expectations, up 21%. However, margins stood at 10.3%, missing estimates and contracting compared to the last year. L&T has said that two-thirds of its order inflows are from international markets. It has maintained its growth guidance for the full year, so that's good news there. More earnings. FMCG major Dabur reporting a soft Q2, but the numbers were largely in line with estimates. Revenue was down by more than 17%, profits lower by 5%, volumes declined by over 7%. But the decline in volumes was not as bad as the street feared, with some analysts had actually pegged a double-digit decline, so coming in better than that. Mangalam is here to decode the Dabur numbers for us. Mangalam.
Well, Dabur came out with their numbers just towards the end of market. The stock mildly in the green, and that's largely because of two reasons. One, the volume decline was lower than feared. Volume decline was 7.5%. The street was expecting about 8 to 10% decline. Secondly, the overall results, which were soft, but were well prepared by the company in its second quarter update itself. So if you look at the stock price move, it was down about 12-13% in the month preceding these numbers itself. So maybe there was a bit of a relief out there. Additionally, the company has gone ahead and announced an acquisition of Sesa Ayurvedic Oil for an enterprise value of anywhere around 315 to 325 crores, implying a net cash outlay of no more than 40 to 50 crores, given the debt that they have on their books is close to 290 crores. Will be interesting to see where they scale this business up from the 133 crore revenue run rate that it did in FY24 itself. As far as the reported numbers are concerned, revenue is a little under 3,030 crores, mildly below street expectations. The EBITDA was largely in line. The net profit was softer than street expectations as well. But the secondary sales of the company in the second quarter grew by 2%, with rural demand outpacing urban demand by 130 basis points during the quarter.
Mangalam, many thanks. From Dabur now to Marico. Shares ended the day in the green after the FMCG company reported a 20% jump in net profit on an annual basis. Volumes rose by 5% on the back of strong rural demand. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, the company's CEO Saugata Gupta said that while rural demand has seen a recovery, there is stress in urban consumption on account of food inflation. Take a look.
At the top end, I think, and which is also driven a lot by e-commerce, quick commerce and modern trade, we are not seeing any significant reduction in consumption. At the end of, but in the middle class, I think because of a combination of, I would say, food inflation and overall retail inflation, we are seeing some stress. Having said that, I think once the inflation goes away, I believe that it will recover.
On to global earnings. Google's parent Alphabet reported a strong set of numbers in Q3, registering a beat across most parameters. This was aided by a 35% rise in the company's cloud revenue. Overall revenue grew 15%, while net income rose to $26.3 billion on an annual basis. In an earnings call, Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai said that more than 25% of Google's new code is now being generated by artificial intelligence. He added that Google's long-term focus and investments in AI are paying off, and this is driving success for the company and its customers. Back home, the disengagement process between India and China in eastern Ladakh's Depsang and Demchok regions has now been completed. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that patrolling would begin soon and the modalities will be decided by ground commanders. Parikshit is standing by with more. Parikshit, what are you hearing?
A significant moment in India-China ties. The disengagement process at Depsang and Demchok, which had begun last week, has now been completed. This is what top Indian Army sources now tell CNBC-TV18. Now, this is as per an agreement that was reached between the two countries and also between the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping. So the consensus is now being implemented on the ground. The disengagement has been completed. Now, Depsang and Demchok were the only two friction points in eastern Ladakh where disengagement was yet to take place. What will happen now? There will now be continuous talks between local ground-level commanders, that is at the level of brigadier and below. Both sides will focus on patrolling their locations, which had existed before April 2020. What the Indian side and the Chinese side will continue doing is verification of the disengagement. See whether both sides have removed any temporary structure, any vehicles that had been put to place. This essentially means that the troops have moved back to areas which they were patrolling before April 2020. That is also before the Galwan attack had taken place. Patrolling modalities are now being worked out between the ground commanders on both sides, and the focus now will be on proper communication during patrolling. As a goodwill gesture, both sides will exchange sweets on the occasion of Diwali. So let's see how things pan out. But disengagement is only a first step. There is no troop withdrawal taking place. if the confidence building measures are implemented well on the ground and both sides are confident, then we will see de-induction of troops as a next step.
Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. And back to the big corporate story of the day. Swiggy is all set to launch its 11,000 crore rupee IPO next week. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, Swiggy's management revealed the company's growth blueprint. It also expects quick commerce to drive growth and food delivery to drive margins. Take a look.
While they have turned contribution positive for the food delivery business, as they say on the street, and EBITDA. On the street, they say, "Ye dil mange more," right? Now that you're listing, you also have a listed peer. With the trajectory that we've seen on them, on a lot of the parameters, they're above, what Swiggy is right now, which is not to say that you're any less. It's just that you're at different stages of growth in your life.
Correct. I think, look, there's a lot of context. We each have our own context, and we are in very, very exciting categories. And our strategy, our capital allocation, everything's going to be a function of our excitement and what we can go after in each of these. Like Rahul mentioned, we've demonstrated the profitability in the food business. We feel good about its future going forward. As for quick commerce, I think it's in a once in a lifetime category, and I think we are seeing consumption patterns change for consumers, and there's so much to be done. So our endeavor will be to make sure that we do the fullest of our ability to make sure that we grow and serve customers well and make sure that everything comes together nicely.
But for quick commerce, you recently said that the peak of the investment is behind you,
That's
but
right.
You're still not a contribution margin positive either. So, I mean, what is the trajectory there for quick commerce? Because even for your peer, that has been the growth driver, right? So how are you looking at the quick commerce business for you in terms of is it also going to be the growth driver for you? And sort of trying to get a sense of the path of profitability on that front also.
See, maybe I'll take this. I think on quick commerce, what really amazes us is the way consumers are reimagining, things, or what can be delivered to them. So it's almost like every quarter we have to recalibrate around, what is the number of categories that we have to be there, what is the number of SKUs we have to launch, and there's a recalibration happening. Growth is accelerating. So there'll be a certain amount of, say, new store additions that we'll continue to do. The old stores continue to mature well, which means that they become profitable over a period of time, and the new stores come in because consumers want a lot more.
Right.
So I think it's a recalibration of our overall growth trajectory in line with the demonstrated path to the contribution margin that we continue to will demonstrate.
Well, you can catch that entire conversation with the Swiggy top team at 10:30 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18 ahead of its anticipated IPO. On to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Oil marketing companies have reduced their intrastate freight charges. Now, this will help reduce fuel prices in remote areas, but within a state. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that the variation in retail prices of fuel will not vary over 2 rupees a litre within a state. Currently, it's higher than that. They vary up to 6 rupees a litre in some remote areas. Now, the Telecom Department has floated a draft cabinet note seeking the waiver of bank guarantees that telcos must submit for payment of spectrum acquired before 2022. This according to sources who say that the note has been shared with the Law and the Finance Ministries for their feedback. Remember, approval of the bank guarantee waiver will require a cabinet decision. The move is expected to largely benefit Vodafone Idea, which needs to secure bank guarantees worth 27,000 crore rupees in the coming months. Shares of Torrent Pharma fell after promoter Torrent Investments sold 3% equity in a large block deal. The deal worth over 3,100 crore rupees took place at a little over 3,000 rupees a share. This move will reduce the promoter's stake in the pharma company to 68%. E-commerce platform Meesho has reported positive operating cash flow of 232 crore rupees in FY24. The SoftBank-backed startup has also registered a 33% rise in operating revenue in the financial year, and this has been fueled by a 35% increase in total orders delivered. Adjusted losses have narrowed by nearly 97% to 53 crore rupees. On to another exclusive tonight. Air India has cancelled several flights between India and the US starting November to December, that period, which is considered the peak travel season. The airline has had to take this decision on account of a shortage of aircraft. Air India says it has offered alternate arrangements to passengers, including a full refund. Madhya is standing by now to take us through the details. Madhya, how many flights stand cancelled and on which routes exactly?
Well, November to December is the peak holiday season when airlines add capacity to meet the rise in travel demand. But here, Air India is forced to reduce its capacity on US routes, although it's a temporary reduction. At least 60 flights have been cancelled between November to December as the airline doesn't have enough aircraft to operate on these routes. And Air India finds itself in this situation as many of its wide-body planes remain grounded due to maintenance and supply chain constraints. So to avoid any last-minute disruptions and inordinate delays that have been happening in the past few weeks, the airline has decided to curtail its operations for some time. From what we learn, of the 60 flights, 28 flights are on the Delhi-Washington route, 14 flights are on Delhi-Chicago route, 12 flights are on Delhi-SFO route, 4 on Mumbai-JFK and 2 flights on Delhi-Newark route. Now, responding to CNBC-TV18, Air India said it has informed passengers about the cancellations and added that passengers have been offered flights on other Air India group services operating on the same or adjacent days. Passengers are also being offered a free change to any other date or a full refund, as you mentioned.
All right, Madhya, many thanks for joining us. Well, Diwali is here and retailers say they are seeing healthy demand, but also add that it's not as good as last year. A special report from Mumbai's Crawford Market. You can also catch all of CNBC-TV18's news and updates on Facebook, X, Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's National Security and Intelligence Advisor have admitted to leaking sensitive information about India's alleged hostile activities in Canada to news organisation The Washington Post. The Deputy Ministers said that while testifying before the Commons Public Safety Committee, their statements had also allegedly implicated the Home Minister Amit Shah, who they claimed was orchestrating the actions from New Delhi. The Indian government has dismissed the allegations as baseless. During the testimony, Drohan said that she did not require Trudeau's permission to disclose the information, emphasising that no classified intelligence was shared with the Washington Post. More than 60 people are here dead after torrential rains have hit southern and eastern Spain. Emergency services have continued search and rescue operations. The central government has set up a crisis committee to help coordinate rescue efforts. The Australian High Commissioner to India pads up for CNBC-TV18 to talk trade and cricket. Speaking to Parikshit Luthra, Philip Green says over 100 Indian CEOs have been invited to Australia when the cricket team goes on tour later this year. Well, with less than a week to go for the US elections, opinion polls show a tight race between presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, with a slight edge to Trump. The latest polls show tight races between the two candidates in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan and North Carolina. In her final pitch to American voters ahead of the elections, Harris called Donald Trump a petty tyrant, making her case for a new generation of leadership. The vice president also vowed to govern as a pragmatist who listens to those who disagree with her. Meanwhile, Trump campaigned in Pennsylvania in an effort to quell anger over comedians' remarks about Puerto Rico at one of his rallies. With 19 electoral votes and no specific tilt to either candidate, Pennsylvania is expected to be the deciding factor this election season.
And I'm so proud that we're getting support from Latinos like never before. We're setting every record. Hispanics, Latinos. Nobody loves our Latino community and our Puerto Rican community more than I do. Nobody.
Nearly 250 years ago, America was born when we wrested freedom from a petty tyrant. Across the generations, Americans have preserved that freedom, expanded it, and in so doing, proved to the world that a government of, by, and for the people is strong and can endure.
Well, that's Kamala Harris. And as I was mentioning earlier, Pennsylvania is expected to hold the key to the White House. The state has acted as a bellwether in the last 4 elections. Which way will it sway this time? My colleague Sanjay Suri gets us this curtain raiser from Philadelphia in Pennsylvania.
A long voting queue already outside the City Hall in Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, the state where the outcome could make all the difference. Who wins Pennsylvania gets to the White House. Certainly that is what a lot of the poll pundits seem to believe. In the 2020 election, this was won by the Democrats by the razor-thin margin of just 1%, and the margin could well be narrower this time. Some entertainment was volunteered to beat some of the frustration of that long queuing. Many of those queuing were making a bid for a last option of a mail ballot. Tuesday was the last day to apply for that option in Pennsylvania in an arrangement unique to the state. Anyone who missed these options after queuing would have then to vote in person on November the 5th. The long early queues could have been fed to a considerable extent by a call from Donald Trump to supporters to come and vote early. But Democrats too mobilized voters, making it hard to see definitively which political direction the queue pointed.
Well, Pennsylvania could play a crucial role in the election verdict for Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. Washington Post continues to lose subscribers, and the total tally has now hit 250,000 so far. This accounts for about 10% of the company's total subscribers. This move comes a day after Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos defended the company's move to stop making presidential endorsements. In an op-ed, Bezos said presidential endorsements created the perception bias. The US has repatriated over 1,100 Indian nationals between October 2023 and September 2024. This has marked a notable rise in deportations of Indian nationals over recent years. The US Assistant Secretary for Border and Immigration Policy, Royce Murray, said that there has been a steady increase in the deportation of illegal Indian immigrants from the US in recent years, adding that the US government is continuing to strengthen its working relationship with the Indian government to tackle this issue. Diwali is here. Mumbai's markets are buzzing with shoppers, but amidst the slowing demand and rising inflation, are consumers tightening their purse strings. Shilpa Ranipeta gets us a ground check from Mumbai's Crawford Market and Lohar Chawl.
I'm here at Mumbai's Crawford Market, and this is Mumbai's go-to market for festive season, whether it is buying for your household or buying gifts for your loved ones this Diwali. And here today I am to find out what the mood is like on ground. There are people buzzing here shopping for Diwali, but are they really loosening their purse strings, or is slowing demand a concern here? Let's talk to the people and find out.
ठीक ठाक है, इतना खास नहीं है। जो 100 पीस ले रहे थे वो 50 ले रहे हैं, जो 20 ले रहे थे वो 10 ले रहे, 15 ले रहे। कम है, धंधा कम है थोड़ा। ज़्यादा करके इस साल चॉकलेट और ड्राई फ्रूट में ड्राई फ्रूट ही बेटर है, चॉकलेट का धंधा थोड़ा स्लो है।
दिवाली का ये साल बहुत ही अच्छा रहा। हर साल से देखा जाए ना तो ये साल ऐसा महंगाई हुआ थोड़ा, लेकिन कस्टमर ज़्यादा हुआ है ये साल में।
धंधा इस साल कम है, पिछले बरस उतना नहीं है, 30% से कम है। लोग खरीद रहे लेकिन कम खरीद रहे, जो पीछे बरस खरीदा उतना ही खरीद नहीं रहे।
Well, at first glance, it may look like the market is buzzing with people. Shopkeepers are saying that this is not nearly as much as the crowd that they've seen in the last 2 years. And what's the reason for that? No surprises there. Rising expenses are pinching the consumer's wallet and shrinking their budgets.
पेटी का पीछे 400-500 रुपया बढ़ गए हैं पिछले साल से।
अच्छा।
उसके वजह से इनका भी काम स्लो चला है। नहीं, पहले से कम है, 50% कम है।
अच्छा।
कस्टमर भाव का बारे में पूछता है, भाव जब ज़्यादा दिखता है तो वो निकल जाता है। फिर
वही बात है ना, महंगाई बढ़ गया है, लोगों के पास पैसे ही नहीं है, मनी नहीं है, तो सब दाम बढ़ते जा रहा है, खर्चा बढ़ते जा रहा है, और लोग का सैलरी या जो भी आवक है वही है सेम, तो अभी कम ही खरीदेंगे ना, पैसा बचा के रखेंगे ना, क्या करेंगे, सब खर्चेंगे तो पीछे का खर्चा भी तो देखना होता है।
बड़े बड़े जो कस्टमर हैं वो अभी प्राइस हर एक चीज़ का बढ़ रहा है, हम लोग का मटेरियल का भाव बढ़ रहा है, उन लोगों को कस्टमाइज के हिसाब से कम पड़ रहा है, इसके लिए नहीं ले रहा है। अभी 2000 का जो सामान था अभी 2200-2500 रुपये हो गया है, तो कस्टमर को भी फर्क पड़ जाता है थोड़ा। 10% सब में लगभग बढ़ गया, 5% 10% सब में बढ़ गया।
मेन तो एक काजू में महंगाई बढ़ी है, और जैसा कोको पाउडर है और चॉकलेट बनाते हैं उसमें यूज करते हैं कोको पाउडर, उससे चॉकलेट का थोड़ा भाव बढ़ा है।
Many of the shopkeepers are saying that this time they've seen a significant impact coming in from online also, with most consumers preferring to stay at the comfort of their home and shop online on e-commerce and quick commerce apps. But now they're pinning their hopes on the upcoming wedding season, hoping that that will bring some cheer and help end this year on a positive note. In Mumbai, Shilpa Ranipeta.
And before we wrap this edition of India Business Hour, US Ambassador to India Eric Garcetti ushered in Diwali in the national capital in true Bollywood style. We leave you with visuals of him grooving to a popular Hindi movie song at the US Embassy. From all of us here on the CNBC-TV18 team, here's wishing all our viewers a very happy Diwali. Stay safe and thanks very much for watching.
Marcani, tu